So you are a patient, Steve, here at Beua. This is the second time that you've been here. Tell us about how you ended up here and a little bit about your background.
Well, I came here originally for gambling, primarily for gambling. I'm not dually addicted, and I started as an outpatient in November of 2009. I moved in as a resident in December of 2009. I worked through the primary program here, through the gambling track, and I was here while fighting a case until August of 2010 when I left to go serve a prison term. And I just paroled last month, and I'm now back here for my second stint here voluntarily. I'm not court committed.
How long was your incarceration?
I was sentenced to 16 months with half time, and I served 8 months.
And was that for a gambling-related crime?
Yeah, my case was for embezzlement. It was grand theft by embezzlement. I embezzled money from my employer to support not only my gambling habit, but also to support my method of kind of numbing my pain and my insecurities about myself, which was to sort of be a big shot. So a lot of the money I stole went to gambling, but a lot of it also went to,
suppression management of putting on the facade.
Absolutely, and also to my method of hiding my addiction. You know, in my belief, a lot of people who misunderstand compulsive gambling don't believe that there's a problem until you've sort of lost all your money. So a lot of my embezzled money went to spend on things to sort of hide that I had a problem. So vacations, luxury items, really nice restaurants, as a way to kind of show, hey, yeah, I'm gambling, but I don't have a problem because I haven't lost anything.
Tell us a bit about how you became involved in gambling.
Well, I think I always sort of had this, I've always been hyper competitive, and even as a really small child, even playing on the playground with my friends, I wouldn't race my friends across the blacktop, so to, for example, unless there were some stakes on the line, unless the loser was buying the winner a candy bar or was getting, dessert at lunch that day or something like that. There always had to be some stakes on the line for anything to be worth my time or my effort. And that sort of escalated, and that was really a means for me to feel good about myself. I went to a private school where I was one of the only kids on at least partial scholarship, and there was a lot of very wealthy children. And I sort of developed this idea that I was less than or worse than these people because their parents had more money than my parents did. And so me finding a way to get over on someone, me being able to take their money or take their belongings by beating them on the basketball court, beating them on the playground, was a way of kind of feeling equal to. And that just continued to escalate my whole life. And the first time I gambled, sort of traditional style gambling was when I was 11 years old, and I was on a family vacation, and I snuck into a casino on the cruise ship and paid some older people to put money in a slot machine for me, and it was like $5 and we won 50, and I mean, I was pretty much hooked from then. And it escalated as soon as I came back. I started actually betting on sports with my friends. I'm from Chicago, and there's 4 major sports teams there, and we started betting on all sports, and through that just escalated through high school until I discovered the racetrack, and then dice games and card games, and through college I got real involved with internet poker and internet sports betting. And then when I ultimately moved out to California, I lived so close to Las Vegas that it was just so easy to take a weekend trip to Vegas. And so between having a bookie in college and gambling online, both with poker, with dice games, with card games, and then Las Vegas and private poker games, it
sounds like for you, gambling was a combination of things. It was this excitement-seeking, novelty, thrill-seeking kind of an activity. It was a way of maybe presenting yourself as more than perhaps what you were. Mm-hmm. It was also a way of kind of trying to, have money that you could then use to, again, put on a good facade, so to speak. What about some people gamble to escape loneliness or boredom or depression? Has that ever been a pattern in your gambling behavior?
Sure, I think I use anything and everything as an excuse to gamble. So yeah, I gambled to try to combat my inferiority complex, but I also gambled when I was bored. I did it as something to fill time. When I was lonely, I had friends at the poker table, so to speak. These people that I always would play with online, or my friends that I really only bonded with over gambling. That was a way for me to be social. And even furthermore, I ultimately ended up getting married, which I'm no longer married as a result of my crime and my gambling. But even then, my gambling was a way for me to prove to myself that I was a worthy suitor for her, and that her family should approve of me because I was a big shot. I was making so much money gambling that I could buy her a nicer engagement ring than all my friends were buying for their friends. I could take her on nicer trips for her birthday than all my friends were doing and everyone else. And it was a way of me kind of alleviating my own insecurity and my own inadequacy of feelings towards, I'm really not suited for this girl, I'm not good enough for her, I don't belong in this family. And my gambling and ultimately my theft was really a way for me to kind of numb those own feelings within myself.
Tell us about some of the consequences. You know, you served some prison time, you lost a marriage because of gambling. What other consequences have you experienced because of gambling?
Well, you know, I sort of was living the quote-unquote dream life, I guess sort of the dream world of the compulsive gambler, as they reference in Gamblers Anonymous. I mean, I was living in Beverly Hills. I had a nice place and a wife and a car and lots of money, and I was taking nice vacations and living at all, going to eat at all these nice restaurants and basically doing whatever I wanted. You know, if there was a concert I wanted to see and it was not in New York, well, I guess I'm going to New York for 2 days, you know? And I had a great job and the whole 9 yards. And sort of overnight, I lost all of it. You know, I no longer had that place to live. My wife left. All of a sudden, I'm facing criminal charges. I still had the car, but I lost a lot of the belongings. And now all of a sudden, I'm living in rehab and fighting a case, and I've got a pending annulment. And it was just sort of, even the consequences while I was gambling. I mean, even before I lost all the kind of material things, I hated myself. I stopped being able to sleep at night. I started having panic attacks. I started vomiting all the time. You know, I couldn't even live with myself anymore. And I would say that was one of the most severe consequences of my gambling.
Tell us about how you came across Beua and why you chose this facility for treatment.
Well, actually, when I first sort of everything came to light, what I had been doing, and I was, I guess, willing or ready or forced, whatever the reason was, to admit that I had a gambling problem, I started going to Gamblers Anonymous meetings. And the third meeting that I went to, when I had 2 or 3 days in the program, is a Sunday night meeting that's housed here. And when I came to the meeting here, just seeking a Gamblers Anonymous meeting, I met some residents who lived here who were here in the gambling program. The gambling program was very much in its infancy then. And I met a couple of the people who were involved in that program, and through Gamblers Anonymous meetings, I became friendly with them, and I started talking to them, and it got to the point where really, I mean, even being in Gamblers Anonymous, my life was really still unmanageable because I had no support system out here any longer. My biological family's still in Chicago. I no longer had the support of my in-laws and my married family. I didn't have a job anymore. I didn't really have a place to live, and I couldn't really take care of myself on a day-to-day basis anymore. I had meetings at night. I had the structure of seeing my sponsor when he was off work, but during the day I was still left to my own devices, and I wasn't gambling, but I was still miserable. Yeah. And so that's kind of how I discovered Beua, and that was when I decided to start coming as a day patient. And even then, I struggled with whether or not I was really willing to make the commitment to move in here full time.
Tell us about the treatment that you've received here. What's been helpful in terms of your process of recovery?
Without a doubt, the most important thing, I get a lot out of all the main components of the program here, the psychotherapy, the spiritual counseling, as well as the integration of the 12 steps. But without a doubt, it's absolutely the community here. There's no question.
Talk about that.
I spent my whole life trying to be something that everybody else wanted me to be. So in high school, I prided myself on, I can hang out with the nerds, I can hang out with the jocks, I can hang out with the white kids, I can hang out with the black kids, the Hispanic kids, I can hang out with everybody. I'm what everybody wants me to be when I'm with those people. And even in my adult life, with my clients, when I was, when I worked in the corporate world, or with my relationships with my in-laws' family, or even my own family, it was never about being myself. It was about, what does this person want me to be? What will make me desirable to this woman, or to this person to be my friend, or to this employer to employ me, or this
pattern of people pleasing, impression management, all of that.
Always, and just completely just living the life of a false persona.
And when you came here?
And when I came here, I found that over time, and it wasn't easy for me in the beginning, and sometimes I still struggle with it, but once I started to be at least transparent and be able to be open and say, look, I'm not perfect, I'm a human being, these are my flaws, these are my faults, these are the things I've done to hurt people, these are the mistakes that I've made, I was embraced. I was completely embraced.
Was that surprising to you?
At first, yes, because it was completely foreign to me, first of all, to be myself, and second of all, to receive that kind of validation and that kind of payoff, so to speak, from leading an authentic life. From struggling with people, from showing emotion to people, from saying, yeah, I've screwed up and I've done this and this and this, and these are bad things and I'm not proud of them, but they're my truth and they're the reality of my experience, and having people want to love me more and want to support me more because I'm willing to be honest about it, not because not if I had been a guy who hadn't done those things.
So you've had this experience here at Beua. You've been here for a while. You served some time incarcerated. You've come back. Where do you go from here?
Even when I first got out of prison, it was a struggle to ask myself that very question, because I received that community that I just spoke about was such a tremendous support system. That's the only way that I got through my incarceration, especially getting through my incarceration without gambling, was because I had over 80 people at my sentencing supporting me, and I had people visiting me every weekend and people writing me. And yet when I get out, I still very quickly go back to that place of, I don't need to work as hard now. You know, yeah, these people supported me, but I don't necessarily need to be there for them. And it was still very easy for me early on to get to the place where I say, well, now I've got over 18 months clean from gambling. I just made it out of prison. I don't need to go to meetings. I don't need to talk to my sponsor. I don't need to go see my therapist. But what I had learned especially with the concept of next right action at Beua is that just because those are my thoughts and those are things that my disease tells me I need to be doing or I should be doing, I don't have to actually act on those. So I've ended up doing the exact opposite. So now, I still go to meetings regularly. I've started working at Beua. I'm interning for the marketing company that's been started here, BTS Communications. I have very real friendships. I work with a sponsor. I have sponsees. And, I'm transitioning out of here. I needed to come back here to transition from prison back to sort of, the real life, the real world.
Are you yourself a person of faith and belong to the Jewish faith, or do you belong to another faith?
I was actually raised an Orthodox Jew, and I went to an Orthodox day school in Chicago, and it actually very much turned me off from religion because it was a lot of very cut and dry. This is how you should be living your life. These are the things you can and can't do, and if you don't do these things, you're a terrible Jew and therefore a terrible human being. And that really caused me to stray away from organized religion for many, many years. And a lot of times it becomes cliche, but the term spiritually bankrupt is really what I felt when I walked into the first GA meeting, when I walked into my first day at Beua as an outpatient, and when I walked in my first day as a resident. And really what I've learned here is really more of a spirituality, sort of with a Jewish twist, I'd say, as opposed to any kind of forced religion.
Should a gambler who's considering coming here be concerned that they're going to have somehow religion forced upon them during this program? Was that your experience?
Absolutely not. The exact opposite. If anything, just like all the rest of the model of Beua, where they use the term, being an individualized program, it's the same thing with the spirituality here. We as residents have our own individual spiritual counselor, and that spiritual counselor, just like our therapist, just like our counselor, meets us where we're at. So there are people who come in here and they are practicing Orthodox Jews, or they're practicing Catholics, or whatever they may be. Their spiritual counselor meets them at that point. And so I was met at the point I was at as someone who has an Orthodox background that was turned off from religion, but yet still desired to have some sort of spirituality in my life. And so through that relationship, both with the Judaic program here and my individual spiritual counseling, I was really able to cultivate an individualized spirituality that worked for me. And it wasn't anything that was forced upon me. I don't feel that there is any kind of set ideology that Beua really promotes or really pushes. It's a Jewish, faith-based program, but the whole purpose is how can that Jewish faith-based program be fit towards me? And how can that work towards my own personal recovery, and how can that be integrated best for me so that I get the most out of it and don't get turned off by it?
Let me ask you a little bit about your ex-wife. What would you say to wives or spouses? What would you say to wives or spouses that are, involved with a gambler?
Honestly, I don't have anything to say. And I think it's a dangerous place for me if I think that I can tell someone whose shoes I've never been in what they should or shouldn't do. And very early on, I had a lot of resentment. I thought, well, she's my wife, she should have stuck by me. And meanwhile, her family was the victim of my criminal case. I embezzled from her family. And yet I still had this ego and this self-centered nature where I said, well, they should have stuck by me, they should have supported me. But the reality is it's not fair for me to have expectations of people that I've damaged. And I've never been with a compulsive gambler. I've never been married to someone who even has an addiction. So I don't really know what to say to that person. I don't feel qualified to be able to say this is what you should or shouldn't have done, because it would be coming from a place of bias of more what I wish would have happened in my relationship, or early on what I thought they should or shouldn't have done, as opposed to really what's necessarily healthy for them. I don't know. Maybe it was healthier for her as a human being to leave me on day one. Maybe it would have been healthier to stay. I don't know.
Did her leaving help or hurt your recovery, or have no effect?
That's a tough question. I don't know. If I had to guess, I'd say it helped because it created such a massive amount of pain that even myself, as someone who had been so guarded and so emotionally closed off for a long time, couldn't keep completely inside. And in a way, that was my first breakthroughs, being able to actually open up and express emotion, both in individual therapy and on a group level, was talking about the pain of my marriage and talking about the pain of losing my wife. And if I hadn't had that, I don't know if there had been, of all the other consequences of my actions, I don't know if anything else would have been enough of a catalyst that it was painful enough to really, to force me to really kind of open those floodgates.
What gives you hope moving forward?
The hope really is just sort of what I've gotten out of the program so far. I mean, I've got over 19 months clean from gambling, and I look back and I remember when 19 minutes was a struggle for me, or 19 hours, or 19 days. And to have gone over the past 19 months and to be able to walk into a room and say to a newcomer, hey, in the last 19 months, you know, I lost my marriage, I moved into rehab, I went to prison and all these things, and I didn't have to turn to gambling or other self-destructive behaviors, there's great hope in that for me. There's hope in the payoff that I've gotten from all these genuine relationships that I've developed by being myself, that it's okay for me to continue to be authentic moving forward.
Great. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right.